I'm a U.S. male, because I was born in a Mississippi town on Sunday morning. Now, Mississippi just happens to occupy a place in the southeastern portion of this here United States. Now, that's a matter of fact, buddy, and you know it well. So I just call myself the U.S. male. That's M-A-L-E, son. That's me.
In the last several months, YouTube has been inundated with a lot of transvestite or transgender investigators that are bound and determined to make every human being on earth that we've ever known into a transgender. Now, one thing I know for a fact is that the devil loves to get people to doubt their own minds. He loves to flip everything upside down, turn everything backwards, and confuse the hell out of people. And that's what I think some of these so-called investigators are aimed to do. Now, I do agree that some of these transsexual people in Hollywood, who we thought were female, we thought were male, have definitely had the operation. They are transgendered. They still have their XX or XY chromosomes, but they've done the cosmetic surgery to make themselves appear to be what they're not. One such person that they have attacked and claimed this to be the case with is Elvis Aaron Presley. What better thing to do than bring down the Christian king of rock and roll? They already killed him. I guess that's not enough. Now, I am a strong believer that Elvis Presley refused to stop singing his gospel music in his concerts, on his albums, refused the Illuminati. They wanted him to put his symbolism all over the stage and turn his show into what Beyonce and people like that are doing today. And Elvis absolutely refused. In fact, I have a clip showing that. Just a minute.
Listen, I'd just like to say before anything else that it's a great privilege to do this satellite program, and I'm going to do my best, and all the people that work with me, to do a good show, which is pure, entertainment. No messages and no this and that. Just try to make people happy for that 1 hour that he comes across. If we do that, well, then I think I've done a job.
I can't do that. I just shouldn't save it for the show.
Mr. Presley, what do you think of women's what do you think of women's liberation?
Well, watch it is right. On social comments like that, I just assume not to make a comment.
Some of you people that had all these pictures, would you be nice to step aside and let these other people...
Oh, Mr. Presley, on the subject of this service, what is your opinion of war protesters, and would you today refuse to be drafted?
I just assume to keep my own personal views about that to myself, because I'm just an entertainer, and I do not say.
Do you think other entertainers should keep their views to themselves too?
No, I can't even say that.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Oh, thank you. The
don't know, or it's never been revealed to anybody that I'm aware of, what qualifications the people analyzing these alleged transgenders have. Personally, I'm not a forensic scientist of any type. I'm not an anatomist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. But I am an artist. And poor Elvis, he had to sit for me without even knowing it for several years while I learned how to draw. And I used his face because I found it very pleasant to look at, very unique. And people would tell me right away if they could tell who it was or not. They didn't have to guess. And if they did have to guess, then I wasn't doing a very good job. So I studied bone structure so that I could do his face properly. And now I'm able to do just about anybody's face. But for now, I'd just like to show you quickly that I am pretty darn sure that I'm a little bit better at analyzing people's bone structures than many of these so-called transinvestigators. Yes, they do come up with some good stuff, but on a whole, they're too inclusive. They're including people that it's practically ridiculous. And I find that offensive, and I find it suspicious. So, hold on. Some of my earlier drawings looked a little stiff, but I got them pretty good. It's not perfect, but you have to know a person's bone structure to get anything to look like them. So I graduated and got a little bit better. Not perfect yet, but I know his cheekbones, I know his brow ridge, I know the width of his jaw, his chin, his neck, which happens to be, well, I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But I just spent all my time, I was sick for a while, and this was what I did to pass my time. And I felt, well, I'm going to learn something. And at the same time, I was writing this poem about him. And you get to learn a lot about a person's anatomy. Like I know what his hands look like. I know that his index finger is about the same length of his as his pointing as his ring finger, but his middle finger is extremely long. And his index finger is, ring finger is certainly not shorter. That doesn't mean anything. That's an anomaly on a lot of different people. If it's exceptionally long, then I would wonder. But in itself, it's not proof of anything. I've already said about my hands. So, anyways, I got to study his face, his hands, his eyes, the width of his nose, everything, throughout the years. And it was pretty neat because he never moved, he never blinked, he never breathed, he never sneezed, he never was hungry. But even here as a little boy, it's quite obvious this is a little boy. It's not a little girl. But they would have you believe that this man is a transgender from a woman to a man. When I first started off, I found it interesting that you could do just his mouth, and people would know who it was. And so I did the same thing with his eyes. This is when I was practicing for when I would do a full portrait. And when I could show these to people this didn't happen the first time round. But when I could show these to people and they could identify who it was without me saying anything, then I knew I could go on and work a little bit better on his portraits. So I know about how his eyes, his brow ridge. And it really pisses me off. But I didn't do any of his full body. I didn't do, other than I think there's one here. Yeah, it's this one here. Right, you know, I didn't do his full body. I was concentrating on facial features. And that's what happened. So when I see these people and hear these people saying that this is a transgender woman to man, it's so insulting to a beautiful, gorgeous. See, I noticed his Adam's apple. He has an Adam's apple. A beautiful human being who is severely manipulated by the Illuminati and the system and refused to go along. And those interviews were in 1972 that you first saw. And by 1977, he was sick, so sick that he dropped dead. So you can see what happens to people that don't go along with the Illuminati. You're expendable. You're worth more dead than alive. So people doing this to him really, really piss me off. And they do it to others as well. But because I've been drawing Elvis as long as I have, there's one here of him in the army, it really ticked me off because I lived in Chicago and I got to see Elvis Presley live. Yeah, here it is. Is this it? No. I got to see him live at Chicago Stadium 6 times. Twice in 1977 because he was there May 1st and May 2nd. And I got to see him perform both times and was already planning on buying the tickets for when he was supposed to come back the following October. And it was very sad indeed. But anyways, I'm going to give you a little bit more proof. Hold on, I'm going to get some actual pictures. But this is what I feel qualifies me a tad more than the people that are putting out these videos that are just looking at images and making, conjecture and it's opinions. Some of them are real, but others, it's just rubbish. First of all, unlike some famous people we know, Elvis Presley has his birth certificate right here. There are several copies of the original. Some are very difficult to read online. This was the clearest one that I have. And as you can see, right here, he was born a boy. Now, back in 1934-5, they did not tamper with birth records. And today, they're now trying to get transgenders into the military. And you have to go through a physical to get into the military. And we'll get into that a bit later. But Elvis was born one of a twin. One died and one survived. This is his birth certificate. He was born January 8th, 1935. A boy. This is before they could they could digitally alter things. So I want you to keep that in mind first and foremost, because I haven't seen the birth certificates of any of the people in the other videos that I've watched about trans investigations being displayed. They just speak off the top of their hat. It's very interesting sometimes, but sometimes it's very misleading. In this picture, we see Elvis Presley as a 2.5-year-old baby boy. I see nothing feminine about this child. The child has a thick boy neck. He's got a nice little square jaw. He's got a tiny bit of a cleft in his chin. He's got a nice little brow ridge going on there. He's a beautiful little bouncing baby boy. And sure, you could take off the hat and you could add curls and do whatever you want. But in Tupelo, Mississippi, 1934-5, where people were dirt poor, this family was on welfare. The father spent time in jail because he stole something to try to bring home money to feed the family. So, and there's proof of this. His house is, a shotgun shack in Tupelo, Mississippi, is preserved down there. There's a historical record of this child, this person, Elvis Presley, being born as a male, a man, a boy, a baby boy, not a little girl transforming into a little boy. And there's definite proof a little bit later, a positive proof that no one can argue with in just a little bit. Whoops, I'm going to have to... And here he is again as a 4-year-old, just getting ready to go to school pretty soon. And that does not look, in my opinion, anything like a little girl. He's got a little boy grin. He's got a nice little square, solid jaw. He's got the high cheekbones. He's got an obvious brow ridge you can clearly see without his eyebrows up. He's still a blonde child at this point. His ears are nice and big. His arms are already husky. That's a sweet little 4-year-old boy. Here he is at 5. If you see anything feminine in there, I'd like to know where it is. I'd like to know. That's a thick neck. That's a... He probably was hungry that day. I don't know. He does kind of be bewildered there. It's probably the first school picture he's ever had taken, and he doesn't know what the heck it is. I don't know what's going on there, but he doesn't look happy. But he's 5 years old there, and that's a little boy. A handsome little boy. Here he is at about, I don't know, 13, 14 years old. His shoulders, there's no padding in this shirt. His shoulders are already wider than his hips. His hips are spread wide apart, and his shoulders meet them as they're spread. They're actually, if his legs were closed, his shoulders would be a good 2 inches wider than his hips. Now, he's just a young lad there. He's only probably around 13 years old. 14 maybe. Here he is, about 16, 17 years old. Hips are narrower than the shoulders. That's flagrantly clear. They're way over here, and his hips are on this side. His neck is nice and big. He's got a nice, big, strong jawline. He's got a masculine face. You can see the squaring off here. Long arm bones, muscular, great big hands, a slim hips. That's probably going down to an Adonis belt right about there. So, like, I don't get where they're coming. You can see his eyebrows more now. As he gets older, you can see the eyebrows growing out on the eyebrow ridge. That's his. He's starting to form his hairstyle. His hair has got a natural wave to it. He used to read Captain Marvel magazines, and he liked the Captain Marvel look, the cape and the jumpsuit with the high raised collar. And he also felt self-conscious about his neck because he thought it was too long. And that's why he started to lift the collar up on his... It has nothing to do with trying to hide anything other than the fact that he thought his neck was too big. Here we have a young Elvis that's clearly 20, 21 years of age, standing outside of Graceland. As we can see, his shoulders are far wide. He's got the typical triangular shaped body here. His shoulders are wider than his hips. His arms are the correct length. His proportions are proper. He's not extremely muscular. He's a rather lean guy. He's an average-sized man. But you still can see the high cheekbones. You can still see the brow ridge quite clearly. And you can see the long, thick neck. That's probably why he has such vocal range. And he's tucking his collar up because he felt that that looked better and it made his neck look more normal-sized. I thought his neck was just fine, but we all have our body problems, things that we don't like about ourselves. And I'm sure that Elvis was no different. So here he is in the army. And as you can see, Elvis has an appendage there. Unlike a lot of these others, there's something in his underwear. And it ain't no sock. That's in the army. His neck measured at 15.5 inches. That is the proper size for a male neck. Here we are again. Oh, and it's still there. It's flaccid, mind you, but I don't think Elvis was at all gay. He didn't seem to hang out with that type. I don't think he had anything against gay people, but I don't think that he hung out with gay people. It wasn't his thing. He liked women. So here we are. We know that when he went in the army, he was 5'11", 5'11 and a half, and he came out of the army, he was 6 foot. So he gained a little bit of height during those few years. My husband went in the Navy, and he was 6'1 and a half, and he came out 6'3 3/4. He was in 4 years. Yep, the average size of the male neck is about 15 inches. Elvis's was 15 and a half. So there's that long neck we're talking about, and why he tucked his collar up. He was self-conscious about that. You can see he's got a nice big Adam's apple there. Big square jaw. He's an average-sized guy, 6 feet tall. He's probably about 170 pounds there, maybe a little bit more. Here he is, getting himself measured. And as you can see, he's got the bow legs. You can't see through the bow legs. But anyways, that's not the point. The point is that his shoulders are indeed wider than his hips. And if he didn't have a penis, a real penis in the shower with these guys back in 1958, he would have been outed so fast and his career would have been over. It was an entirely different time. So these people that, yeah, see, he's got the complete 3 head length widths on his shoulders. He's got the 2 widths for his hips. That's the male body ratio, as we can see here, for the male. Now the female, now here he is. This guy is probably about 6'6". He's considerably taller than the others. This one's probably about 6'2". Elvis is 6 foot, or maybe 5'11", because he's just going in there at that point. But as we can see again, I apologize, Mr. Presley, Elvis, but you can see these boys all have appendages. They all have something in their underwear, which is a penis. When did he get it whacked off? I mean, my God, I think I'll go back again. I'm just going to go in so you can see. You can see all these guys. You can see they have something hanging there, each and every one of them. And if one was different, if Elvis or any of the others didn't have a penis there, they'd have been, like, it just was different back then. There wasn't the same kind of tolerance, especially in the army. So I just wanted to clarify. apologize to Elvis's family for this, because it's disgusting that anybody would have to do this. But I noticed this when I was a young girl. And this is the day that Elvis Presley's mother died. And they're crying outside, and somebody caught this shot, and I'm sure they didn't catch it on purpose. But we can see Elvis Presley is a male. He's crying in the arms of his father. He's just lost his mother. It's 1957. The man had his equipment. There was no castrated Elvis Presley, or they didn't have. It was very complex surgery back then. They wouldn't have been able to attach, and it's ridiculous. That's just the way a man looks when he sits down, for crying out. Those are his testicles, for crying out loud. So here are the measurements for his body. They posted those so here we have neck 15.5. This was in 1957. Chest 42, waist 32, sleeve 32, 31.5, inside seam 17.5, pant inseam 32, hat size 7.5, and shoe size 10. And then we have down here, in 1967, neck had grown a little bit thicker. His chest was the same size. He gained 2 inches on his waist. His sleeve, all these measurements are still the same. His boot size was a size larger. His hips were a size larger. I believe that's right. Hips, what were the hips up here? Do they have the hips up there? No, I don't see the hips up there. Then they might, I don't know if they were larger or not. And coat length. For him to custom make him this suit. So his tailor had all his information, and it's ridiculous to, I mean, those are the measurements of a man, not a woman. A woman might have a 42-inch chest, but if she does, you're going to see some hooters there. Trust me, that's his rib cage. That's a big chest. That's a nice sized chest for an ordinary, average sized man. So here are his fingers. He broke his fingers in doing some karate thing, so that maybe finger is crooked. We can see that his fingers are quite long. They are not like his fingers are something like my fingers. My fingers look something like that in that particular position. Now we see over here when the hand is raised, and that's pretty much the way mine looks, only I'm a lot smaller than him. But I have, if someone were to analyze my hands without knowing me, they'd say, oh gosh, yeah, that's a guy. If it was just my hands. That's funny. Here we see again, the proportions are quite fine. This is not an anomaly unless the ring finger exceeds or is equal to the middle finger. That is in a woman. Then that's a definite indication that there's a lot of masculinity in that woman. If it's a shorter and it's on a man, it just means he's more feminine. It can indicate transgenderism, but it doesn't always indicate it. And here it just shows an average finger length. There we go again with the finger lengths. And we can see that there is no curvature here, that his back goes up and around the way a man's does. There's no curvature here. Here we see, these are also for the Adam's apple, for the jawline. You can see the Adam's apple. Like, I don't know where these people get off trying to make this into a woman. Sure, it would have made a beautiful looking woman, but he wasn't a woman. He was a beautiful looking man. And there we are. There's nothing tiny about this person. There's nothing imbalanced about him. Yeah. There's nothing. You can see the Adam's apple. You can see the Adam's apple. He fits the shirt just fine. He's got a 15 3/4 inch neck, which is rather long. And we can see that it sticks up on either side of the collar. And for Elvis, that was uncomfortable. He liked to raise the collar up. Not because he was trying to hide anything feminine, but that he was trying to hide something that is actually more masculine, that he thought was too long. So there's a nice shot of the Adam's apple, Adam's apple, Adam's apple. Now we look at the brow ridge. This is a male brow ridge. This is a female brow ridge. As we can see, Elvis has a male brow ridge. I already showed you in my drawings. That is a male brow ridge. If this were a woman and they found this picture, they'd say, look, it's a man. Like, they just flip-flop on everything. The jawline is straight across, big jaw there. He looks the same, only better. He just gets more handsome as he gets older. Like most men do. I find, anyway. What's feminine about this? He admits that he dyed his hair because he said his hair was white. Probably like mine. I've got pretty much similar bloodline, except for I don't have the Cherokee Indian in me that he has. But, yeah, my hair is turned light very young. So what am I looking at here? The brow ridge, the brow ridge. And we got the proportions. Here we are with a woman. Now, I just adjusted that. This is with a woman. A normal, average-sized woman. She's probably around 5'4", or something like that. 5'4", 5'5". And she's in barefoot. He's in barefoot. As you can see, he does not have a curve in his back, but she does. She's got the curve in her back. He's got the rounded shoulders. Hers go down like this. His go down like that. It's quite different. That is a man and a woman. This is the woman here. This is the man here. Not everyone is a transgender. Here he is with Priscilla. Oops. Priscilla had baby-bearing hips. Elvis does not. As you can see, his shoulders are, he's straight up and down. He's straight up and down, and she's all curvy. That's male and female. That is not two women. My goodness, people. And she did not become a man. Here we go again. Elvis there. I mean, who is the man and who's the woman? Do you not see these muscles here? Now, I've always wondered about Ursula Andress, because he even said kissing her was like kissing a guy. He didn't like it at all. And it shows how professional he was, because he still made the movie. And so did she, to give her credit. But he found her very masculine. And he didn't like that. Now this is broad shoulders. They've I don't know if that's greased up or if they're just both wet from coming out of the water. But it's showing his definition a lot better than it does when You're not greased up or wet. This is a sweet picture with him with Priscilla and Lisa Marie. And as you can see, he's much taller. This is out of public. This is in the privacy in their own. These are private home pictures. His hips are tiny. His shoulders are much broader. He's got the collar normal because he's not going anywhere. He's not going on stage, not going in public. There's his wife. She's about 5'3". So I would have been like really tiny next to him because I'd have been a foot shorter. So she can't be much. Yeah, I'd have been about to there. So she's about 5'3". But anyways, that's the physique of a man. As you can see, that's the physique of a man. Oh, lo and behold, there he is. Now he has these, they've pointed out these and saying those are feminine. There are all different types of those. And I'm going to show you. Okay, so here we have the collarbones I was referring to. This gives you some kind of an idea of the variety of different types of collarbones on a variety of people. Now, Elvis has this kind of collarbone. Quite frankly, I have one straight across. Apparently, that's very masculine. They claim that this here is indication that Elvis is a woman. Well, no, it's not, because anybody can have these different types of collarbones. And some are very prominent, and some are recessed. I've seen people with concave chests. I've seen people with barrel chests. And the same with their collarbones. Some people, it really is prominent, and other people, it's barely noticeable. Anyways, that's another thing that is inaccurate and doesn't match Elvis Presley and is not a female trait. It's a human trait. In a second. Just like there are all kinds of different facial structures. Some people, my daughter looks just like, she looks so much like my husband. My daughter, if one of these people got a hold of a picture of my daughter, thank goodness, I asked her to stand up the other day so I could measure her shoulder hip ratio, and her hips and her shoulders are the same width. So that was a blessing, because if they had found that her shoulders were a tad pardon me, were a tad wider than her hips, they'd have mistaken her for a man. She looks like my husband. She does not look like me. My son looks like me, and my son's shoulders he's passed away now, were very, very wide, and his hips were very narrow, and he was very masculine, but he looked like me. So the features can change from parent to parent, depending on what parts of the DNA they each inherit. And all these different facial features can be found. I know there's square-jawed women. When I was a kid, there was a woman my husband and I knew, and people would tease her and call her Chisel Chin. And because her bottom jaw would stick out, and she looked very manly because of it. And it was a sad thing because she was such a lovely person. And she was all female. She was poor. She didn't have any money to go running around getting sex changes way back in the 70s. That's crazy. But anyways, that's the way her face was shaped. My face is shaped like this. My face is more of a round face. Where did I see that square face? The square, was it this one? No. That's the oblong face. My daughter has this more shaped like this. That's almost more of an Elvis shape. It's you can't go by the width of the person's jaw all the time and use that to discredit their sex. Their gender. It's silly. Oh, I have to go back here. I gotta go all the way up. I was talking about the curvature in the back. This is Elvis's back. That's the back of a woman. It's just the way it is. You can see that Elvis's back is straight. The way a man's muscular angles are. Elvis has that too. Like, where do these people get off? I'd like to see the woman that could pull this off without having padding. Now, there's probably a little padding in these jumpsuits. That's just the way they're tailor-made, because back in the 70s, everybody was wearing shoulder pads. It doesn't mean that he was trying to make anything look different. He would have looked stupid without them because everybody else was wearing bell-bottoms and shoulder pads. That's what the style was. It has nothing to do with them wanting to hide anything. That was the styles in the late 60s and early 70s. So I got to go back here. Yeah, there's another thing that brings us to Elvis's exceptional good looks and features, bone structures, is the fact that he is biologically related to the Cherokee Nation. His great-great-grandmother was a full-blooded Cherokee lady. And there she is. That's his great-great-grandmother, who was a full-blooded Cherokee, and her name was Mourning Dove. And that's in part where he gets his bone structure. Now we can see all the way up here, the shoulders are wider than the hips. All the way up, shoulders are wider than the hips, like they're supposed to be. Shoulders are wider than the hips. He looks the way a man's supposed to look. Women's charts. A large woman has a 42.5-inch hips to 44.5-inch hips. The thigh, that's okay. The thigh is 23. The sleeve is 35, and the neck is 16.5 inches, from 14.5 inches to 16. These are women's sizes. Women vary in sizes. They don't give the hips there. I don't know why I even read that off. But anyways, here's Elvis again with his very handsome face, very manly face, a beautifully sculpted bone structure, but that's his own bone structure. He's got this brow ridge, deep set eyes. They're not too wide apart. It says here, I'm going to just wipe. Elvis Presley, the epitome of good looks, has the maternal ancestry of Cherokee Indian to thank for his fine facial bone lines, which we can see quite well. Now, the Cherokee Nation discredited and disowned Elizabeth Warren because she was claiming the same status that Elvis Presley has, her great-grandmother, and there's no proof. When there's proof, there's proof. So here he is. You can see the shoulders are wider than the hips, and he's as tall, if not taller, than most of the men around him. The size of his head compared to Priscilla's is quite a bit of a difference. Of course, he's got quite the head of hair there. I can imagine his skull, that's poofed up there. So I can imagine his skull is about like that. And hers is poofed up too, so it doesn't matter. But that's the way they used to wear their hair back then. The women's was all big hair. Big hair. That was the thing. And if you didn't have big hair, you were nobody. So anyways, let me see what else we got here. Yeah, I looked through all of these. Yeah, we're done. I just wanted to show everybody how ridiculous it is that people can assume. Look at the shoulders on the guy. Look at the neck. If that was a woman, they'd be outing him as a man. It's absolutely ridiculous. Here he is at the thinnest I think we've ever seen him. Because in 1968, when he did this special, he was 168 pounds. Now, I must remember that it was he did agree to do these some of these symbols on his suits. They were subtle, and until we got to see them up close in magazines, we didn't know what they meant. We didn't think anything of it. But there's, what is that? The Aztec, it's something, the Mayan stone or something on there. But he's had eagles and he's had all kinds of things all over his jumpsuits. And he's had the electric, the lightning bolt for his logo, taking care of business. That came from the Shazam Marvel comic books. People interpret that as being satanic. I don't think that ever crossed his mind. But that's what they interpret, because people are they're just nasty. They want to bring down the best of us. I'm not even anywhere in the caliber of Elvis Presley's talent. I am honored that I was able to get pictures of him so that he could sit for me for hours and hours and hours while I experimented on his poor face. But I got pretty good at it. And I know a facial structure when I see it. And this here is a full-blood American male. This is no transgender woman.
Presley.